Chapter 24, The Secret Contributions of Valiant Thor, Washington, D.C., 1952. In the wake of the Roswell incident, the world held its breath, as if the land itself were aware of the cosmic tremors that had reverberated through its very essence. It was in this enigmatic terrain that Valiant Thor, the mysterious and heroic cosmic wanderer, found himself advising President Harry S. Truman regarding interplanetary civilizations who are currently known to be on the planet Earth. As Valiant Thor continued his discussions with Truman about interplanetary civilizations, he couldn't shake off the feeling of danger lurking in the shadows. He knew that his presence on Earth was not going unnoticed by other civilizations, particularly their long-standing enemy, who had a deep-seated resentment towards him. But despite this knowledge, Valiant Thor remained focused on his mission to guide humanity towards a better future. Little did he know, this resolve would soon be put to the test in a dramatic and unexpected way. In the month of July 1952, while Valiant Thor was still in Washington, D.C., a series of unidentified flying objects were sighted over the city. This caused widespread panic and confusion among the public and government officials alike. At first, many believed that these UFOs were part of some elaborate hoax or military exercise. However, as sightings continued and increased in frequency, it became clear that there was something more sinister at play. Valiant Thor immediately recognized these UFOs as belonging to their long-standing enemy civilization. They had finally made their move to attack him on Earth. The situation quickly escalated when one night, an intense battle broke out in the skies above Washington, D.C., between Valiant Thor's newly assembled advanced spacecraft and the enemy's fleet of UFOs. It was a battle unlike any seen before on Earth, with advanced weapons and technology used by both sides. Buildings shook from the shockwaves caused by laser beams and explosions filled the air. The sky lit up with flashes of light as the two opposing forces engaged in combat. The people of Washington, D.C., already on edge from previous UFO sightings, now found themselves caught in the middle of this intergalactic war. Panic spread through the streets as they watched in awe and fear at what was unfolding above them. As the battle raged on in the skies above Washington, Valiant Thor quickly realized that he needed to go into hiding. He couldn't risk any innocent lives being caught in the crossfire and becoming collateral damage in the ongoing war between him and his enemy. But before he could disappear, Valiant Thor had one more important task to complete, delivering another, and perhaps final, message to Harry Truman. It was a message of both warning and advice, urging him to be cautious of other interplanetary civilizations and their intentions towards Earth. However, as Valiant Thor prepared to meet in person with President Truman to discuss his message even further, the president suddenly fell ill. Rumors began to spread that the enemy aliens were behind this illness as a way to keep Valiant Thor away from the president. But regardless of the truth behind his sickness, it only further cemented the urgency of the message. When Valiant Thor was finally able to meet with President Truman in person, he expanded on his prior warnings and urged again for extreme caution in dealing with other interplanetary civilizations. Although President Truman was hesitant to implement any real changes resulting from Valiant Thor's counsel, he couldn't deny that there were indeed UFOs present in their airspace and that something extraordinary was indeed happening. Meanwhile, sightings of UFOs continued all over the world, not just in Washington, D.C., but also in other major cities like New York and Los Angeles. People were fascinated yet also terrified at the prospect of extraterrestrial life visiting Earth. Valiant Thor then went into hiding while keeping an eye on Earth from a safe distance. The attacks from Valiant Thor's enemy stopped after he distanced himself from the leaders in Washington, D.C., but nevertheless, this warning message had been delivered, and it was very clear that these aliens would stop at nothing to take out Valiant Thor once and for all, if and when given the chance. After delivering his urgent message to Truman, Valiant Thor knew that he had to go into hiding to ensure the safety of both himself and the people of Earth. He couldn't risk any more attacks from his enemy, and wanted to avoid any potential harm to innocent lives. So Valiant Thor made the decision to move to the small, remote city of Churchill in Manitoba, Canada. This quiet and peaceful town was located on the Hudson Bay and known for its stunning views of beluga whales and polar bears. As Valiant Thor settled into his new home, he spent much of his time observing these magnificent creatures in their natural habitat. He found peace in the beauty and simplicity of nature, away from the chaos and conflict of Washington, D.C. But even in this serene setting, Valiant Thor could not escape his responsibilities, as an interplanetary ambassador. He continued to monitor events in Washington and communicate with other members of his own civilization stationed at their secret base beneath the surface of Venus. During this time, many people around the world were still reeling from the shock of UFO sightings and trying to make sense of what was happening. Some welcomed the idea of extraterrestrial life visiting Earth, while others feared it. Meanwhile, Valiant Thor's enemies continued their search for him. They knew that he was no longer in Washington, D.C., but they were determined to find him and eliminate him once and for all. As months passed without any sign of Valiant Thor or further attacks on Washington, D.C., people began to question if perhaps he had left for good or if he even existed at all. As years passed, Valiant Thor continued to live in peace and seclusion in Churchill, Manitoba. He had grown fond of the small town and its people, but he knew that his duties were not over yet. One day, Valiant Thor received a message from his fellow beings on Venus. They informed him that there would be a change in leadership in the United States, and that it was crucial for him to return to Washington, D.C., to ensure the safety and progress of humanity. Valiant Thor understood the importance of this mission and bid farewell to the people of Churchill. With one last look at the beautiful polar bears and beluga whales, he boarded his spacecraft and set off back towards Washington. Upon his arrival back in D.C., Valiant Thor could sense that things had changed drastically since he left. The city was buzzing with tension and uncertainty as a new American president had been elected, Dwight D. Eisenhower, a former military leader from the last World War among the humans. Valiant Thor knew that this new leader's military background could potentially lead to dangerous decisions and actions towards other nations or even possible conflicts with extraterrestrial civilizations. He wasted no time and immediately sought out President Eisenhower. Despite being warned about his arrival by top government officials, Eisenhower agreed to meet with Valiant Thor. In their meeting, Valiant Thor shared his wisdom about peace, unity, and progress for all of humanity. He also warned Eisenhower about the dangers of aggression towards other nations as well as beings from other planets. Initially skeptical, Eisenhower was gradually convinced by Valiant Thor's powerful arguments, which were supported by demonstrations of his advanced alien technology. Truman, his predecessor, had left him a note regarding this vexing matter in his resolute desk after all. After their meeting, Eisenhower became closer allies with Valiant Thor than even Truman was, and the president eventually trusted him more than anyone else in his cabinet or inner circle of advisors. He frequently sought out advice from Thor, who was always glad to provide the president with his wise counsel. As time went on, Valiant Thor's influence on President Eisenhower grew even stronger, leading to significant policy changes such as the interstate highway system within America. Under his guidance, the United States shifted its focus from military dominance to a slightly more subtle posture. This was the most rewarding period in Valiant Thor's lifetime, but unfortunately, his enemies had not yet forgotten him.